Congratulations. I know this is a really personal film for you. Could you just tell us a little bit about the origin of all of this and where this came from?
I played 4 years of high school football. It was my life. I loved it. I loved the camaraderie. I loved the lessons that I learned from it. I was okay at it too. It was my claim to fame is that I scored a league record 4 touchdowns against the team that went on to win the California State Championship, and that was my high. It's just been a downward spiral. And so, out of that experience, at the same time, I was going through a lot of internal struggles with my identity, my sexuality, and with that came a tremendous amount of shame. And so 10 years go by, eventually I come out and I own myself, my identity, and I lean into it, and I love myself, and then it comes time to think about writing a movie, and I think, well, I know the world of high school football, I know what it's like to struggle with who I am, and maybe there's an arc there, some sort of internal character arc that I could put on the screen, so that's kind of how it came to be.
It's really beautifully driven by this cast. It's a fantastic cast. What were you looking for when you were casting these different characters? Or how did that process come about, particularly with Riley?
With Riley, I needed vulnerability. I needed someone with a demeanor and a face that you could just long, there's a sense of longing and longing for self-assurance, I guess. And Jake, who played Dakota Riley, is this tremendous actor. We found Jake for a short film that we did. It was basically this proof of concept that we shot called Rendezvous, and in that short film, it's basically the scene between Riley and this older Obi-Wan hookup character. And so that scene is a short film, and we reshot that scene for the feature, so that's kind of a standalone piece that we found Jake for. And he came in, he cold auditioned for that short and just knocked it out of the park, and we shot that little short movie in 2020, and he was just wonderful. So when it came time to do the feature, I had Jake in my head. I knew he brought a certain quality that I knew he would be able to pull off, and so we stuck with him. And then from there, it was kind of piecing the rest of the cast around him, and he did a lot of chemistry reads with the other supporting characters. And to go kind of back to your question, I wanted authenticity. I wrote a lot of the dialogue just trying to pull back from what I remember 10 years ago. What were my teammates talking about at the lunchtime table? They were being raunchy and talking about girls and asking, oh, who would you want to get? Just pulling names, Stephanie is cute, I don't know, I'm just pulling names out of a hat, trying to fake my way through it. And so I leaned into that, and that's how we tried to cast, who gave the most authentic, oh yeah, that kid knows just how high schoolers act. And I am so stoked on the cast. We had really, I feel really blessed with the performances that we were able to get, but it's all them. I'm just writing words on a page, they're just totally bringing it to life.
Jared, so I heard that you had, there's a cute story about how the music kind of came about for the short first.
Oh, sure.
So would love to hear that. And also I heard there's some interesting instrumental choices that were part of this, so.
Yeah, so I can speak to the whole score of Riley. It started because I was house sitting for this producer that I work with. And oftentimes he had me house sit for his dog and his cat whenever they would skip town, and so this is probably the second time, and I was getting to know his animals, and so he had an upright piano in his living room, and I just looked at the animals one day and I was like, what the hell would they sound like if they were a piano song? And so I put my phone on top of the upright piano, and I looked at the cat, and I was like, I think this is what the cat would sound like if it were a piano song. And so I uploaded those songs into my Dropbox, and I gave Ben this Dropbox link a long time ago of hey, you can use this if you want, I don't know. And he would just siphon through it one day, and he's like, oh, I want to use this one. It was titled Sleepy Captain. because the cat's name was his cat's name was Captain Amazing. And so Ben took that song, this really lo-fi, kind of crusty sounding phone recording of, it was called Sleepy Captain, and he put it into Rendezvous. And I thought, oh, okay, you're making the full feature version, let's just spin off of this piano piece. And so I wrote a bunch of music for it based off of this piano piece. At the end of the rolling credits, you can kind of hear like a throwback to that. In the final version, I like re-recorded the last couple like stanza on my phone again. And so, but yeah, this whole score was basically based off of this, I don't know, this like, what I thought was like, honestly, what I still think is like a really stupid, like, impromptu, just a dumb little thing.
Well, I want to take this time to open it up to questions from the audience. Maybe if I can see you, do folks have some questions they'd like to ask? Right over here.
Do you think that Jake Hawley bears any future resemblance to Matt Dillon?
You said Matt Dillon? Yeah, does Jake Hawley, our lead, bear any resemblance to Matt Dillon?
Not in terms of just appearance, but sensibility and
Well, when he came into Cold Audition, I was getting Timothy Chalamet, which I'm like, okay, great, he's the one, let's do it. And then, and then we did the feature, and recently we heard the younger Affleck brother, Casey. I heard Casey, I'm like, oh, I like Casey. Casey Affleck's good, and then so Matt Dillon, we'll add that to the list. Matt Dillon did not cross my mind, but we'll add it to Jake's list. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question about the line that kind of stuck with me, which was, "I am not straight."
Yeah.
And I think that's really profound. I was not expecting that. I was not
Oh,
expecting
cool.
you to say that. I wonder if you could explore a little bit more. Like, you wrote that line soon.
I did. That was one of the lines that I wrote. Well, so the breakup scene was challenging because I knew that I needed some sort of arc with this character, but I also knew I didn't want the big pride parade at the end of the movie. And the biggest struggle with me was coming out to myself. That was really what I struggled with personally. And once I came out to myself, then it was just logistics. Like, okay, let me get my friends together at this Denny's one night and tell everyone. But it was everything before that that I was really trying to work through. And so when it came time to write that scene, I knew he needed some sense of, who am I? I know who I am, and maybe I'm not quite ready to come out with it, but I'm gonna poke at it a little bit. And so there were, and I was also balancing. I don't want to be so on the nose here, like I'm gay, and because maybe he's bi, maybe he's questioning. I don't know, but I know what I am. But in terms of what this character was, I knew I didn't want to be super on the nose with it, but I also needed some sort of like, okay, he's reached a point within himself, and he's at least able to get this far, and he's able to tell, Riley's girlfriend in some sort of way. And so that's kind of where I was coming from with
Well,
that.
thank you for that. That was a great line. Thank you.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question about the scene when Riley's girlfriend brings him into the stall after that dance, because the scenes we had seen before was you really couldn't get into it, and it kind of just ended scene. So I was like, oh, is this a success?
Yeah. In the full script, it is a success. We reach full climax in that one.
What was Riley experiencing? Was he into it?
I think there was maybe an element of this impromptu, oh, we're sneaking into the girls' room, and so I can kind of lean into that. And the first attempt in the car didn't go so well for him, so now he knows, okay, I got a second chance at this. And so yeah, that's the idea, is that he kind of goes all the way, I guess. The edit, in terms of pacing, we ended up just kind of cutting the rest of that moment. But that's the idea, is that he's able to kind of reach at least go a little bit further there.
Was that autobiographical?
I took several creative liberties, but that wasn't necessarily one of them. I was offered to hey, come into the bathroom in the middle of the school day, but I was just terrified. So I didn't follow this particular individual into the bathroom. But I've done it now vicariously, so I've been able to experience that in a different way. Yeah.
We have time for one or two more.
Yes.
This question's for Jarek. How did you come up with like the instrumental use when you're scoring a feature?
Oh yeah. When Ben approached me to do the film, I thought, oh hey, I want to pick up some new toys, and so I hit up somebody, a good friend of mine. He sold me one synthesizer, and I said, I told myself I want to cubbyhole myself to write this whole score, with the exception of like a couple drums and the ending piano and guitar at the end. I wrote the whole thing on one synthesizer, and one instrument came into play. My friend, a good friend of mine, shout out to Mark Matamoros, who I met at an old job in San Diego. He created this silly looking thing. It's called the FLC, and it's just this giant thing, this wooden thing of strings. It's kind of like a harp looking thing. And so that's kind of what made the sound in the beginning, during the news sequence, and at the end during the final like football chant thing. And so yeah, it kind of all came down to like one synthesizer that a friend sold me, and this thing, this instrument my friend Mark made.
So we have to wrap up, but I just want to ask, what would you like audiences to take away from your film? And where do you see this going next? What's the next time?
I think I set out to write a story for the version of me from a decade ago. I wanted to make a movie that 17-year-old me would have watched and been like, okay, I'm not the only person going through this. And so that's what I set out to do. And then as we've played and folks have seen it, it's been really, really a blessing to see the different types of people who have resonated with this character. And there's been this realization that, like, of course, everyone, regardless of sexuality, struggles with who am I? Who am I supposed to be? What expectations do I have that either I've set myself or that other people have set for me that I'm trying to work through? And it's been really cool to see those folks kind of come up to us and say, hey, there was something I took from that character. So maybe that's what I want to put out into the world, is that no matter who you are, like, find that and lean into it, and whatever it is, it's okay.
Thank you. We'll both be out front after this, as well as the artists for Mask, so you can continue to have the conversation with them there. And thank you all. Thank you.